What up, guys? Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. Today, we're going to get into another edition of our rules for Jiu-Jitsu. The rule that I'm going to share with you guys today, I think, is pretty much a rule for pretty much everything in life, and just one of those things. When I look at everything that I've done, and when I read about the things that other people do, you see this kind of thing happening over and over again. And we'll talk about it from that standpoint, but then we'll also talk about it from a very jiu-jitsu focused standpoint, the technical stuff, jiu-jitsu, the strategy, everything else. And so hopefully you guys enjoy it, and hopefully it gives you an idea to chew on for your own training in jiu-jitsu. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Ice Barrel, if you guys have not heard of them before, Ice Barrel is a company that produces it's basically a big sturdy plastic barrel, and you throw water and ice in there and it'll get you really cold and you can do your ice baths there. One of the things about it that is nice is that it can be a little bit less cost prohibitive. If you've looked at any of the like any of the ice tank plunge type things, anything where it's an ice thing, ice bath thing. I mean, they get really expensive. I've seen some of them go upwards of like $12,000 and $14,000, which is pretty steep. And so a lot of you guys are probably not willing to spend 10 G's on a thing to take an ice bath, which you're probably not going to do like that often, right? And even at the most, you'll be in there for a couple minutes at a time. So again, Ice Barrel makes a really nice product that then again allows you to take an ice bath, and it's very easy. It's very portable. You don't have any hoses or electricity or anything else like that. So you can put it wherever you want to put it. You can put the ice in there, put the water in there, and you can take your ice bath. I've personally been doing ice baths pretty regularly as of recently. I have one set up on my back patio, and I've been getting some of the guys to come in and do some ice baths. And I don't do them just to let you guys know, because I know I've gotten a couple questions about this recently. People were saying that they've heard that ice baths are really good from some people, and then some people say that you need the inflammation to make improvement and things like that. And so they heard that they're actually bad. Like anything else, ice baths have their place, right? You can overdo it with just about anything. And so you can definitely overdo it with ice baths. And so one of the things that I've liked using ice baths with, first off, I don't do them around workouts. Like if I'm lifting weights. If I lift weights, I don't do them. I don't do an ice bath after lifting weights, because I want that inflammation to help build the muscle. But I found that it's really useful if like I get done doing a jiu-jitsu session. Like here's an example. This morning I rolled with our guy Brandon. I had 2 sessions with him, and he was a little spunky this morning. And so like he kicked my butt the first round, and then the second round I was like, all right, like I got to stop, like, because I kind of just was like getting beat up, and I was like, all right, I got to stop being a little bitch. I'm going to come after him again,
Mm-hmm.
And the second round I came after him, and we had a pretty good roll, and I got wiped out after that one because I put a lot into it. Well, after that session, and again, I had rolls with other people as well. After that session, I was banged up, tired, everything else. Took my dunk in the ice bath. I did 2 sessions for 2.5 minutes each. Got out of the bath, went out there, and I did a meditation and breath work in the sun, kind of warm up that way. And then, bro, I felt good for the rest of the day. Like, I mean, I'm here with you now, and I'm pretty perky. Feel great. So I like it. I like it for that. I think it's great for that. It can be great if you're doing 2 days and kind of in between. And I like it after jiu-jitsu some days, but I just don't like it every day. And I don't like it after lifting. That's my personal bearded opinion. Take that for what you will. But again, if you guys want to get an ice bath set up at your home or wherever so that you can do these and do them with some regularity, Ice Barrel would be a great company to check out. You can go to their website at icebarrel.com/jiu-jitsu. That'll give you a discount on the product, of course, because you're supporting the podcast and we're advertising it for them. But it's a good product. I felt around with it. Eugene and I are going to be doing an ice bath in the Ice Barrel that they sent us to try. You'll see how that goes. It's a good product. So if you guys want to get started with ice baths, that would be a great product to get started with. icebarrel.com/jiu-jitsu. Also, thanks to Charlotte's Web for supporting us, as they have for a number of years. Again, if you guys are training a lot, and again, it's another one of those recovery tools. I think this is something where when you start training jiu-jitsu, you start treating yourself a little bit more like an athlete, because you have to. You're doing athletic stuff. And so with that, a lot of times it's not just the hard training that you're doing that matters. What's just as important is the recovery afterwards, right? And so a lot of us are looking for the ice baths, the supplements, and everything else. And again, nothing's going to beat good old-fashioned food and sleep and all that stuff. That said, there are some good supplements and good things to throw into the mix. Obviously, we talked about ice baths before. CBD is another great supplement that you can try out. Again, I use CBD as part of my nighttime routine to wind down and help support just an overall sense of calm and help deal with the everyday stress that we all have, and also can help with maintaining healthy sleep cycles. So that's why I like it. But I know that a lot of people say that it's useful for recovery from exercise-induced inflammation, which we all go through from training and having our joints yanked on. And again, I know that some people say that it helps them with having a sort of a sense of focus to some degree. So again, you can check it out for you and see what kind of effects you have on it personally. And again, if you want to do that, you can go to their website at charlottesweb.com. The promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. If you guys are curious what I use right now I'm using a tincture, which is it's an eyedropper, and I use the 17 milligram dose. I've tried the 60 and I didn't find that I needed that high of a dose personally. 17 seemed to work fine for me. So you may be different. I know some people that go 60. For me, 17 does the trick. I don't notice any benefit from me personally going to 60. But again, try it out for yourself and see what kind of effects you have. So if you go there and you go to their website, charlottesweb.com, Jiu-Jitsu20, get your order of Charlotte's Web, whatever product you like, the gummies, the tinctures, whatever, and then be militant about taking it every day at the same time or different times to kind of see what kind of effects it has. But try it make sure you take it every single day. And then after that month is over, sort of take an assessment and see what it did to you. Now, again, if you've already used Charlotte's Web and you already like their stuff, then good, go buy some more. But if you've never used it before, it's a good time to try. And again, the promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 at charlottesweb.com. Also, thanks to Matt at Epic Roll. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. Matt is a jiu-jitsu black belt who makes jiu-jitsu gear for us jiu-jitsu practitioners. Again, he's got a lot of cool t-shirts, designs. He's got hoodies. He's got everything else. Right now, I'm on his website looking at the leg locker t-shirt. It says attack the he, kneel, and toe. If you guys have if you've never checked out his website, go to his website, look at the designs. Again, for me, I like them. I think they're clean. They're not too much. They have a little bit of an artistic flair to them, but it's not something where, at least for me, sometimes less is more. And a lot of his stuff has that kind of thing going. It's very clean designs. And so again, he's got good quality stuff from the rash guards and the shorts and the gis to the apparel, good quality stuff. And then he's also got cool designs. And so again, for me, I like that. And he's also a jiu-jitsu practitioner in the community. So I like supporting the guy. So if you guys want to check him out, epicrollbjj.com, promo code is jiu-jitsu for 15% off. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Upon joining, you'll get access to a bunch of exclusive content we've been producing for the last several years, an exclusive library that's not available anywhere else. It has everything from podcast extras where it's you and Eugene and I. It's also some of our guests that we've had on. In fact, no, I say some of our guests. Every guest that we've had on the podcast has an episode inside the Patreon. So if there was a particular guest you'd like or you liked, they'll be in there. And then we also have some other things like stretching routines, seminars that have been recorded that I've done. All that's included with it. And you get access to it at our patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast for an affordable price. And if you want to get my daily email, you can go to my website at jujitsu.net/join. Upon joining, you'll get access to some exclusive ebooks that I don't release anywhere else, and they're free. And you can get into them, dive into them, and they'll help you out with your jiu-jitsu training as they give you some ideas on how to have more focused jiu-jitsu training. And along with that, you'll get my daily email where I send out offers for exclusive offers where they're not available anywhere else. Like when I was doing my Swollen Roll product just about less than a month ago, the people inside my email got access to it for the cheaper price. I was sending out information about my jiu-jitsu camps. My email subscribers were getting the information about it. So if you want to join up, do that at my website at jujitsu.net/join. And guys, with that said, let's jump into it. So today's idea that I'll share with you is pretty simple. And I think when I go through this, you'll be kind of nodding your head like, okay, that makes sense. But the idea is the magic is in the setup and the preparation. So I remember years ago having one of my students who we were talking. He owns a body shop where basically they fix and paint cars after wrecks and different things like that. And he was telling me that with body work, You could take, if you do your setup work really well, you could take an average priced paint, like middle of the road priced paint. And if you did your prep work really, really well, you could make the car look amazing. But if you were sloppy with your prep work, you could go buy a really high dollar expensive paint and the car would still look like crap. And again, that's kind of an idea, right? That's basically the prep work is really important. You can think of the quote that Abraham Lincoln is famous for saying, which is, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe, right? You can think about from a standpoint in things where people will say someone was an overnight success, right? You'll see those a lot. You were an overnight success, but people didn't see all the work that went before, right? And a lot of times very rarely is anybody an overnight success. The success happened very rapidly, but it was only because the foundation they had laid, making all the mistakes or doing all the prep work, allowed that to happen. It's even like when I got into the YouTube stuff, my YouTube channel, compared to many others, grew very fast in jiu-jitsu. And again, you could say, well, had success pretty quick, right? But it bears reminding that I had been training since 2003. I've been wrestling since 2000. I had spent years reading just book after book and studying philosophy and different things that I found interesting, right? Which gave me something to share with people. And that's what made the channel grow, right? And so, again, you can think of it in that standpoint, okay? Like just everything from a standpoint of training and jiu-jitsu and all the stuff that we do with the grappling, right? If you compete, right, what's the most important part? It's not the day of the competition. The day of the competition is important, but the day of the competition is merely to show what you did leading up to the competition, right? So everything that matters is done before you step foot in the competition day for the most part. To me, 80% of it is done before you ever compete. Like, did you do your extra cardio? Did you diet down to the right weight class that you should be in? Did you drill your techniques? Did you roll with focus? Did you get yourself acclimated to the rule set? All of this stuff goes into it. And then when you compete, it shows. Right now, on the day of, there are tactical things that you could improve or that you could make mistakes on or that you could take advantage of. But like all of the big stuff that's going to take like days and weeks to change, that's all been done before you ever step out to compete. The prep work's really important. You could do all the tactical stuff right, or try to at least, and all that stuff. But if you have a weak gas tank, your techniques aren't sharp, you're in the wrong weight class because you're overweight and you should have cut weight, like all that stuff, if that happens, you're going to just bomb the tournament more than likely, right? From a technical standpoint, like really dialing down to a technique, when you look at a lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners, really good ones, right? I'm decent, but like you can look at even like really good ones, like the best guys in the world, like a Roger Gracie type thing, or it's sometimes Rodolfo Vieira, Andre Galvao, or Tyra Tolo, or all this stuff. A lot of times they find a technique or 2 or 3 or 4, a handful, whatever, that work for them really well. And then they find a million different setups to make that technique happen. Right? Instead of trying to master a whole bunch of techniques, they have a lot of different setups. The setups are the key. I even remember when we were down in Costa Rica and Tyra Tolo was showing a back escape, and it led to a damn darce. You know what I mean? Like, because he's just got a darce, right? He's got a great darce. So it's like we're asking for a back escape, and somehow he turns it into a darce choke. You're like, of course, right? This completely makes sense, right?
Right.
And so again, you can think of at that point, like, everything comes back to your setup, both from making it sharp and everything else, but also in the way that you might train. The setup and the preparation is so important. And I think that it's sometimes where, in a world where a lot of times we see the finished product, but we don't see all the stuff that went into making that finished product, we sometimes forget that happens for everyone, right? We will see someone who's like, 20 years old and they're winning some big tournament. We're like, whoa, man, this 20-year-old's winning this tournament, but he's been training since he was 4, right? Like and he was homeschooled and he was basically training full time since he was a kid. It's not there's nothing magical about it, right? The magic was in the fact that he's been preparing and doing this stuff. He's been set up for this for years. But a lot of times people get impatient because then they'll look at that and they'll say, "Oh man, like, I need to get started." Or even like I've seen people where they'll want to start gyms, they'll want to start YouTube channels, they'll want to like make a business thing, and they're like a year or two into this stuff. And I'm like, you can do, of course, we can do whatever you want to. But like, what are you in a rush for? What do you have to share? You should be focused on developing yourself and building a foundation so that when you decide to enter that realm, you have something to work with. You have something to give. You have something to base your future success upon rather than simply, I want it, I'm impatient, and I don't want to wait anymore, right? Like it's a bad mindset to be in. But I think, again, that's the idea. And so when it comes down to it, you really have to think about like when you're trying to get somewhere or whatever with something, let's say jiu-jitsu, right? You're getting ready for a competition. You're getting ready for a big tournament. You're getting ready for a super fight or whatever it might be. Everything goes back to your setup and your preparation, right? That's what really matters the most is what you do there. Everything else is secondary. And so that should always be the focus. And then off the mats, I think it's the same damn way. Everything goes to your setup, your preparation, and a lot of that in many cases is simply you're getting your reps in, doing the work that you need to do day in, day out, learning from it, getting the feedback and improving and constantly trying to improve from that stuff.
Yeah, I think I think you're right, and that's the difficult part. The competition, like you see, like MMA fighters always talk about, the fight's kind of like the dessert. That's like where you get to show off what you've worked for. It's the stuff that's kind of not really people are seeing. And I think with social media as well, like all we see is the success. A lot of times, you don't see like the missed, for weightlifters, the missed lifts or the times when you're getting submitted. You're seeing highlights and things like that. So it can be a little deceiving when that's all you see in your mind is like people being successful. You think it's kind of easy. Like someone like Brandon, who's a purple belt, right? Hasn't been training jiu-jitsu terribly long at all. But think about the number of hours and years he's put in a grappling art that he's transferred to jiu-jitsu. And the other thing, how many hours he trains a week and how consistently he trains. And I think that's what people overlook. They say, oh, he's only been training a couple of years or whatever.
He's also an athletic freak.
That is too. And you got to take all those things into account. I mean,
you have to. And I don't mean this as a slight to Brandon. I mean,
no,
he just is. Like, I mean, like, and I like, for instance, like when I roll with him, like it's like, man, like he's got some damn good genetics. It's like he's got good genetics meeting with a great mindset and a great work ethic, right? It's like the perfect storm,
right?
But you have to throw that into the mix because I think sometimes people like they can be unrealistic,
Yeah, that's it too.
It's like one of those things we're saying, okay, like, hey, I want to go play in the NFL. How big are you? Well, I'm 145 pounds and I'm 5'6". It ain't happening. Like, no matter what you like try to think about, no matter how much you quote manifest it, it ain't happening. You got to be realistic with what you're shooting for.
Well, true. And then look at the prep work. And the prep work could be how many times can you get to practice, right? If you want to be a world champion, an MMA fighter, whatever. Well, can you get there 5, 6, 7 days a week? Can you do 2 a day some days? Or is your schedule not allow for it? Then if you're going to go out there and have an MMA fight and you're not training as much as you should, you're not putting the work in, you're going to get hurt. And MMA is a more severe kind of, the consequence more severe than probably jiu-jitsu tournament.
Can be, yeah.
But jiu-jitsu tournaments as well, if you're not prepared, somebody will break your leg. They'll tear your knee up, and that can happen too. So you have to be kind of, the prep work's really important. What do you think, like, as far as, for you, I think we've talked about this before. When do you like to start your prep for a tournament? And what do you think are some of the things, like, even not the physical, but the mental things you kind of go through, or like the ideas that you try to kind of bring forward before you actually start your training? I'll think of like a training camp.
Well, so first off, I try not to get out of shape, or at least not too much.
That's a great idea. Yeah, great.
Right, like, I mean, again, I might not be in like competition shape. And as you get older, I found this out. Your cardio will leave you a little bit faster than it did when you're younger. Like when I was younger and I'd be in competition shape, my cardio would leave me slower. Now in like 38, like when I stopped doing all that extra cardio I was doing, I lose it pretty quick.
Yeah.
I still got some of it, but it leaves. But I try to stay in decent shape at all times. I eat a decent diet. I'm always working out. I'm always training. So that's never not going on, right? I
Right.
don't. I remember watching a lot of old MMA fighters, both in the professional levels and even from like the amateur level that I was surrounded by when I first started training. I remember seeing these guys. They would train really hard. They'd get in shape, and then they would go fight. And then when they were done fighting, they would just screw off.
Yeah.
And they'd get overweight. They'd get, and not, it wouldn't be just like going back to their normal weight. They'd get fat. They would just gain weight and just start like gorging themselves. They wouldn't train. They wouldn't be working on their technique. And then another fight would come up. They go back into fight camp and they would just kill themselves to lose the weight. And when they were fighting, they were always the same person. You know what I mean? They were never growing. And the thing that I always noticed was that when you watch the best fighters in the world, they were always improving. There was always a new little link to their game being displayed every time they fought or competed. And so for me, when I'm not competing, I'm a lot of times trying to work with new techniques and new positions and improve on things, right? And maybe not even new positions or techniques completely, but maybe different details, variations, or different setups or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the real setup or preparation for a competition, I usually start around around 8 weeks or so. Because again, it's exhaustive. It's exhausting, and you get tired, you get mentally fatigued, and you can only maintain that for so long. And that'll just mean like extra drilling, extra cardio, dieting. And when I say dieting, I mean like cutting my weight down, because my walking weight tends to hover somewhere between 204 to 210, somewhere in that range. But like when I compete, I'm much better when I'm competing around at about 200 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
As far as my weight class goes. And so that's what I try to do. So, and when you're in a sport like jiu-jitsu, there's no advantage to competing in a weight class that you're like, if you're chunky, and again, there's nothing wrong being chunky. I don't care. But if you're competing and you want to get the best results for yourself, there's no advantage to you being like just having extra fluff and not, and just all you need to do is cut a couple pounds, So for me, it's like, there's no advantage for me to go to super heavyweight and compete when I could just diet for 4 to 6 weeks, up to 8 weeks, and be right where I need to be.
Yeah.
But usually I think about 8 weeks out.
Yeah. I think a really good point that you made was that you're kind of like, when you're outside of like, say, quote unquote training camp, right? You're kind of doing your research and development at that time. You're tinkering, you're improving techniques. So then when you do go into your training camp, you're fine tuning those things. You're not developing new stuff. So you're already starting to kind of like either build off of whatever your techniques are that you already have, obviously building that game plan, or you're maybe adding new layers to your game plan as it is, which I think is great. That's kind of the evolution piece. Like if you see a fighter, like you said, MMA fighters, some of those fighters, you see them fight like every time they're a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, their striking's better, whatever, so you see them kind of evolve every time, not the same fighter. And then if you kind of quit evolving, that's kind of when you get passed up.
Sure.
And so I think that's a really good point, not having, you're already at this level, you're already at the certain level, and then all you can do is go up. You don't have to kind of restart and get yourself into shape. You're not spending part of training camp to get into shape. You're starting to fine tune your techniques and improve your techniques, and then kind of implement them into your game.
And it also helps with not getting injured, like trying to rush into a training camp and like going through it all. It leads to injuries. I've seen plenty of jiu-jitsu and MMA guys jump into a hard training camp, and then they're trying to cut massive amounts of weight as they're trying, because they got lazy, and then they're trying to like train really hard, everything else, and it just leads to injury, because you're having that issue where you're asking for more activity from your body and you're giving it substantially less amounts of food.
Yeah.
And your body can't repair itself. Whereas if you're in shape and you're just ask your body to do a little bit more, and then you take just a little bit of food out of the mix, then the drops and the rises are far less, and they're not nearly as hard on your body as they would be otherwise.
Well, there's got to be some on ramp and on ramp, like getting onto the training camp, where there's probably like a, if it's an 8-week camp, there's probably a week and a half where you're trying to build your body to kind of tolerate that increased drilling and increased activity. And then you're kind of, really burning it hard for some weeks there in the middle. And then kind of the last week is kind of more tapering down. You're taking it easier. You're letting your body kind of recover a little bit and feel more energized.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. What do you think is something that people overlook in their prep work? Is there something you feel like
For
people
like what,
maybe,
competition or for anything?
well, let's start with jujitsu. Like, say, jujitsu competition. Is there one aspect you think people really overlook, and maybe even one aspect that people kind of overvalue or put too much stock in?
They undervalue recovery. They overvalue hard training.
Mm,
I mean, hard training is important. I mean, there's no way around it. You got to train hard, but like you have to have recovery. I mean, look at the best athletes in the world in sports where people are making millions, not the thousands, right? We're talking about like look at the sports where people are making millions upon millions of dollars, and you look at their habits and the way that they train. They don't train just like balls to the wall crazy trying to beat the
yeah.
crap out of each other. They have these very deliberate training bursts where it's like, for instance, in like and they're not making millions necessarily, but there's a lot of money in it. And there's a lot of notoriety, especially when you talk about the Olympics, like wrestling. And in many cases, they will have sessions that are geared towards just drilling. There will be no live sparring, just drilling, just getting your moves in. Now it's exhausting. It's a great
Yeah.
workout. And then they'll have sessions that are geared towards just going for the live wrestling, right? And again, there's a lot of emphasis put on to training intelligently, training deliberately, and then having a good recovery, because recovery is really important. And I think that a lot of jiu-jitsu people don't value it. And the reason why I say that, people will send me messages all the time telling me, Chewy, I feel like I'm falling behind because I'm not able to train as hard as this guy. And I want to train 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, all this stuff. But no one comes up and it's like, hey, Chewy, like, man, I'm not recovering enough. I need to take another day off. Like no one ever says that, because they think that you're going to just like somehow your body will just deal with it, right? And the problem with that is it leads to burnout, it leads to injuries, it leads to stagnation. It'll lead to these days where you're there at the gym, you mentally willed yourself to show up, but you're just like you're in a brain fog, and you're not going to get the most optimal training in, because physically you're there, but you're wiped out, your body's weak, and you're shot. You would be much better served resting, recovering, and then coming back and having a full head of steam and a full gas tank. And so I think those are two things. And again, there are periods of time where you're going to have to push it and get into an uncomfortable place. But when we're talking about performance and talking about getting ready for something, you have to make sure that you're giving yourself adequate time to rest and recover, because it's just as important as that training. Without, you have the stimulus, yes, but again, without the recovery, without the right foods, without the right sleep, without all these things in place, you're probably going to find that you're never going to reach your full potential. And you'll probably have this experience, if you do this, where if all of a sudden you change your diet, you start going to sleep at a better time, and you start dialing that recovery aspect in, and basically your lifestyle in, you will find that your jiu-jitsu gets way better, and you will feel massively different, and you'll have that contrast. I've had students where they kind of shrug some of this stuff off, and then they would start eating better, or they'd start, getting more sleep, or they'd lay off the caffeine a little bit or whatever. And then they'd come in and feel like $1,000,000, and they had contrast. And then they would say, oh man, Chewy, like this is crazy. I know you were telling me to do this, but holy crap, this really worked. I'm like, well, yeah, because that's how I found out about it, right? Because I used to do all the same stuff. And so those are a couple. I mean, that's the basic idea, but that's a lot of times undervalued when it comes to all of this stuff.
I think you got to learn the hard way sometimes. You have to make the mistakes. You have to sometimes get injured to realize what you were doing wrong, and to keep yourself, what do I need to do to stay healthier, or listening to your body a little bit more. I think those things are, it's very easy. Like you said, I was talking to somebody the other day about you getting injured, how your injury rates have gone down drastically. And you'd think it wouldn't be that way. You would think that as you get older, you're going to be more susceptible to injury. And you have been, knock on wood, you've been less injured, far, far less. I mean, you
Yeah.
used to get injured it was probably every couple months.
Every couple months had something.
You'd have to be off for a week or like 5, whatever it was, right? It wasn't anything major. And sometimes you had some major things, but I think you took your recovery and then like you listen to your body, like even having hard days and easy days, right?
Yeah.
In training, even hard days. So I'm gonna have a drilling day that's pretty tough, or a rolling day that's pretty tough, and then the next day I'm gonna have more of a technique day or something. That's hard because that takes some discipline there. That takes because rolling's fun, right? That's the fun part. And so I talk about that with people that are injured. That like one of the last things I want to take away from somebody that's injured is their jujitsu. If jujitsu is kind of their thing they love. And like I'm like, can you do jujitsu in a way or modify it or even keep yourself from rolling? Like still be on the mats, be in the gym
Yeah.
in a way that you're not going to risk re-aggravating, prolonging this injury. And it's so hard for people to do because the pull of rolling and just seeing people and feeling that energy is so strong that the people just go in. And I've had it to me as well. I say that because I've done it myself. I've completely like been like, I shouldn't roll today. And somebody asks you to roll and you're like, all right, fine. And you do it. And then you get pissed off because you get hurt or you aggravate an injury. And so I think that discipline is very important, but you have to learn the hard way in some ways. Like you can tell people, it's like having a gym enforcer, right? We talked about, you're messing with the white belts or whatever, and then like you have somebody rough you up, and then you realize what it feels like. And I think that's necessary.
Yeah, and when it comes to like a creative endeavor like jiu-jitsu, or even like with what I do with like the business content creation, all that stuff, people also underappreciate what I would consider like incubation time. So like when you're working on a technique, there's this period where you're drilling it, you're training it, whatever, it's not hitting, but then eventually it happens, right? It starts to work itself in. It has to sort of grow within that incubation period, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's times where, I will have a point where my business where like I'm looking for something and I just don't know what I need to do with it yet. So I start going back and I start reading books or start studying stuff. And it seems like I'm not being productive because I'm not doing anything really. But then all of a sudden I get this good idea from something, or I come up with a good idea myself or whatever. And then I execute on that. Right. And then all of a sudden it works out great. Even like with, some of the business stuff that I've done, some of the decisions I've made, lots of good stuff have happened over prolonged periods of time of like preparation and deliberating and thought and all of that stuff. And so I think it's one of those things too, where, in that sense, people again don't appreciate that period of like, this takes time, or that kind of idea, right? We want it now. And it just doesn't happen that way. Sure, some people sometimes, every now and then find a way to sort of crack the nut relatively quickly or early on. But for the majority, right, it's going to take some time, and that's completely normal. And I don't think that sometimes people either think about it that way or they underappreciate that aspect of it. They know it's going to take a while and they underappreciate it. And then once they get into those periods of difficulty or periods of where they're getting stuck, so to speak, and that happens, then all of a sudden it becomes, oh, this is difficult. Well, it's going to take a long time. Yeah, you already knew that, but you didn't really think about it that much. So, that kind of thing. Maybe that's a little bit esoteric, but again, I see it from people who are, business owners or people who send me messages about content creation. They're like, they're so amped up and like itchy. I'm like, well, this is going to take a while. Be ready for
Well,
it,
the game plan part is kind of like you're talking about the incubation period because you don't feel like you're directly. It's an indirect way of growing your business or growing your YouTube channel or your endeavor. It's a way of kind of like doing almost like background research in some way. It's like you're doing these things that
Sure. It's exactly what it is in some cases.
yeah, it doesn't directly like you don't see direct progression or direct growth from it because like, well, I'm reading a book. I'm not making a YouTube video, right? So I can't see the views racking up. I'm doing something that's not really people aren't really seeing but you are like building that foundation of ideas or the concepts or the direction that you want to go, right?
Or even
You
the
got to think,
plan.
yeah.
Right? Before a general sends in the soldiers to fight, he has a plan, right? He has an idea of what he wants to do or what she wants to do.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. You have to have a plan of action with what you plan to do with any of this stuff. And that's really important. And again, a lot of people underappreciate that idea to sit down and actually plan things out. A lot of times we live in this sort of, again, it's a culture where it seems like everything's happening at a frenetic pace that you have to be going. And you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can choose not to. It's in some cases you do, but in a lot of cases you can take a step back more so than what you think.
Yeah. What do you think as far as business goes? Like something people overlook in business.
There's a lot of stuff they overlook in business. It depends on
All
the
right,
person.
give us a couple. Like, so let's talk about people talk about jujitsu gyms starting their own gym. We
Yeah.
kind of talked about the idea of you got to put the time and the work in. There's too many good jujitsu practitioners out there that if you're like a blue or a purple belt, you're probably gonna have a little bit of a rough time unless there's no jujitsu in the area at all. So I think like you got to put the time in that way. I think that's just to be said. You have to have, you know, at least probably a brown or a black belt, and also have the kind of the blessing of your instructor. You can't just kind of go out on your own and go rogue. You can, but it probably doesn't usually bode well for you.
You
You want to,
can.
yeah, you can, but it's probably not smart.
It depends. I mean, the thing that I think ultimately what you really have to think about, I mean, there's different factors and everybody's a little different. If you're going to be a jiu-jitsu coach and you're trying to run a business, I mean, number one is you need to learn how business works. At some point, you know, and it's okay to jump into it and then learn on the fly like I did, but you got to learn how it works because you are running a business. And if that business fails, you fail all the people that you want to serve and support, and your students,
Yeah.
all their dreams and aspirations. You'll fail your family, yourself. So, you know, don't be a failure. Learn how business works.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is that you should probably be focused on filling up your experiences up as a coach, as a person, instead of before you jump into teaching, you know, or before you jump into owning a business or whatever. Not to say you won't have more experiences, but you should want to say like, you should want to have something to give, right? And if you think of like Joseph Campbell's work and his idea on the mythological stories that are out there. In the mythological stories, there's always this hero that goes through their adventure, their journey, and then they come back to the beginning and they share this elixir of life, this experience or this knowledge they've learned, and they share it with everyone else. And that's essentially what you're doing. You're going on this jiu-jitsu adventure yourself, right? Building yourself up, and then you're coming back around and saying, here you go. Here's a few things I've learned that might be useful in your adventure. And so if you're going to do that, you should probably have something to share, opposed to just making it about you and like, look how cool I am. And that's a big one. That's a real big one too. I get messages sometimes from these young, like up and comers, right? That are like, you know, doing stuff and they're trying to build their social media or something. And they'll send me a message and they'll say, hey, man, like if you want to sponsor me, man, like I'm killing it these tournaments. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. You haven't come to it from anything from my standpoint and said, here's how I could serve you. So I don't, why would I help you? Like, I don't know who you are, you know? And I think sometimes there can be a level of narcissism associated with this. It's fine to be like fascinated with yourself and how you're doing things and wanting to improve and being introspective to some degree. And it's a different thing to be a complete narcissist and just think that everybody should just, you know, bend over for you and give you whatever you want. But I share that because, again, a lot of times people in jiu-jitsu do the same thing. I'm going to open up a gym because I want to be a jiu-jitsu coach. Well, good for you. Like, what are you going to do for these people? Right? Like, what are you going to bring to the table for them? Because ultimately that's what you're going to have to do. Because I've seen plenty of gyms fail where they come into it with that mindset. I want to be a jiu-jitsu coach because I hate my job. It's a terrible fucking reason to be a jiu-jitsu coach, right? Like I've heard that one from some people. Like I want to be a jiu-jitsu coach because I hate my own 9 to 5. Well, I'm not saying that maybe you could find a job that has more purpose to you, and maybe jiu-jitsu coach could be the one, but that shouldn't be your main motivator. Your main motivator should be, I'm trying to like build these people up that are going to be coming to you to learn how to stand up to bullies, to learn how to better their kids, to learn how to, you know, pick their life up together after they got a divorce, and to, you know, find out how to find some exercise modality that works for them so they can get off all these medications and so they can finally look in the mirror and not hate themselves, right? Like a lot of shit's going on in there.
Oh, yeah.
And people have these ideas of like, well, I want to do it because think about who you're helping first. It's a big deal because if you can do that, that's the way business works, right? Like we get mad at like greedy quote capitalists or greedy people. If they make something that people really want, they're going to get it. You know, I mean, like we can talk about, you know, Amazon and Jeff Bezos. So we can talk about how he makes too much money or whatever, right? Like you can also talk about the people now get frustrated if they don't get something shipped to them like in a day.
Yeah.
They started that. They came up
Yeah.
with a service that served the people so darn well that now people will complain on one hand, they'll get on social media and they'll gripe about how this billionaire has got too much money. Billionaires shouldn't exist. And on the second hand, they'll say, well, damn it, I ordered this package and it's been 3 days and it still hasn't arrived. It's like 3 days that like anything like when I was like in my early 20s, it was like you're waiting a week or two for anything.
Yeah.
And so again, when you think about business is about serving people. And ultimately that should always be the goal. Yes, you can be a greedy bastard and want to make lots and lots of money. That's completely okay. But if you do what we do, which is my view, one, there's a personal relationship you have with all those people, right? But also two, from a completely monetary and business aspect, you should be focused on how can I serve these people in a really powerful way? And so that goes into your prep work when you're thinking about running a business. What are you doing this for? How can you serve these people? What are you going to bring to the table for them? You're talking about earlier about doing research. This is part of the research. What area are you going into? How are you going to serve these people? What kind of programs are you going to offer? All that kind of stuff. And so that stuff's important. And
I think part of the prep work is knowing your audience, right? It's exactly what you're talking about, knowing your audience. And the other thing is what sets you apart. Like there's jiu-jitsu gyms everywhere now. It's like what sets your gym apart from another gym? Is it the training atmosphere? Is it the culture at the gym? Is it the the coaching? Is it the facility itself? Like, do you have really nice equipment, nice mats, whatever? Like those type of things matter to an extent. I mean, I think the most important thing is like the community, the people. That's what I've realized as I've been doing this for 15 years or however long I've been doing it. You stick around because of the community and the people and the relationships in a lot of ways. When you're not purely a competitor like me, I'm not a competitor. I mean, I
which
compete.
99% of people are not pure competitors.
and so what is it like? Yes, like okay, I may go to a gym like Autos and train 3 times a day and sleep in like whatever it is, right? Share like sleep on someone's couch, but that's a purpose, and that gym does that purpose for you. But like for 99% of people, like you said, it's about the community, right? Why am I going to drive across town when I can go to this gym down the road? Well, I don't connect with the people. I don't.
Sure.
It's about the community, the people, and that's what sets the gym apart. And that's why you want to go to the gym. That's why you keep showing up. And the training is awesome. 100%. That's very, very important. There's like a pie chart of different things and that pie chart's different for everybody. What they hold as most valuable. But for me, as I'm getting older, and I still want to train and be active in jiu-jitsu and stuff, like I think the community is holds more water for me, holds
It's
more
important.
weight. It is, man. And I think like I was gonna think like as far as like the importance of failures as well. Like when we talk about like being a success in jiu-jitsu, being a success as a business owner, or even a YouTube channel, like the importance of failure. And I think we've all had failure, some more than others, and some are more visible than others. But I think like you have to have failure in life because those are like the most real lessons. For me, they have been. If I've lost a jiu-jitsu tournament, like I've learned more from that than winning. I don't know about you, but
Well, the failures work that way because they sting, right? Like it's an emotionally charged event that makes you take notice. When things are going well, you don't really give too much thought, right? It's why you can think about like we all know if you're old enough, we all know where we were during 9/11, right? Or we all know where we were during some big, event because it was negative. Like there was a negative charge to it.
Yeah.
And this is why, like, when people say like losing isn't losing, or failure isn't losing, it's learning, or something like that. I don't like that term because it is learning, but losing's a part of that. And you shouldn't look at it as it's the thing is like we all want to be like happy and positive and flowery all the time, right? it's like, that's not life. That's not the way life works. It's like you look at life has like this duality about it everywhere, right? There's an up and the down. There's, there's a night and there's a day. There is a yin and yang. There is a male and female, right? Like, this is just the way nature works.
Yeah.
And so in our lives, there are going to be positive events and there's going to be this negative charge to things. And the negative isn't bad. We don't need to demonize it. We just need to take notice. Something
Yeah.
happened that's telling you, hey, listen to this. It's like if my body's hurting because I was overtraining, it's saying, hey, big guy, will you back off a little bit? Because my shoulder's hurting right now, right? Like, will you back off a little bit? Because we're a little bit overtaxed. And I think that trying to extinguish that negative feeling is a bad idea because you should be using it. And so, because what that does is when you're talking about prep work and building yourself up, I feel like the more failures you make, the more mistakes you're able to make, and allow them to feel the sting, but allow but not allow the situation to consume you. To me, that allows you to sort of build your foundation up, right? You get to build your foundation because you get feedback, and that allows you to build a much broader foundational base, whatever you're doing, right? It doesn't matter. We're talking about business, we're talking about jiu-jitsu, everything. And the wider the base, the more it can support like the height, so to speak, right?
Sure.
So a building, the wider the base, the taller it can be, right? And so it's the same thing. Like, a lot of times when you think about the failures that you make and all the feedback you get from it, the more that you listen to those things and learn from them, the more success you tend to have down the road. I know that for me in my jiu-jitsu, being able to accept those failures and those mistakes and all that stuff, it was around like purple belt, brown belt was when I really got it, right? When I really got it. And then all of a sudden, like, my jiu-jitsu shot up because instead of me like not learning from these things and making the same mistakes, I was rapidly improving because I was taking notice to everything that was going on. And so it's an important thing. And again, failures are okay. It's going to sting, and stinging it has that negative charge to it, but you don't have to look at it as a life-consuming thing or something that's necessarily bad. It just is what it is. All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. Hopefully you got an idea from it. Again, the idea of prep work, the idea of setting things up. It's important. Sometimes the setup in that prep work takes a lot of time. It's very monotonous. It can sometimes be boring. But again, what I found is the better my prep work, the better my preparation leading into something, whether that be a business, whether that be a jiu-jitsu competition, whatever it is, it seems to always pay off on the other end in like spades, multiples, right? So, maybe 1 minute of time spent in preparation pays back like another 4 minutes or another 4 times or whatever on the other end. I made that stat up just off the top of my head, but again, that's what you get the idea of what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so again, just an idea to chew on. Hopefully it helps you out. Again, big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Ice Barrel. If you guys have heard about ice baths, like all of us have, and maybe you've played around with them a little bit and you'd like to set up a home ice bath setup, maybe you've looked up some of the different setups that require electricity, or you've looked up some of the setups and you're not really willing to spend some serious dough on getting an ice setup. Ice Barrel could be a solution for you. They have a very light, it's fairly light. It's a big sturdy plastic barrel made specifically for taking ice baths in. You can get in there and you can kind of stand up so you don't have to put yourself and contort into any weird positions. And because of the fact that it's portable, you can put it wherever you want. You can travel with it. If you have to put it on the back of a truck or something like that, well, you can do whatever you want to with it. And again, if you want to get one, you can check out their website at icebarrel.com. And then /Chewjitsu, CHEWJITSU. We have an exclusive discount with Ice Barrel if you want to check one out and get one. But again, check it out. I think ice barrels are great. I think ice baths are really useful as a recovery tool from time to time. And so I encourage you to check it out if that's something you're interested in. And also thanks to our sponsor, Charlotte's Web. If you guys have never done CBD before, or if you've never tried Charlotte's Web CBD before, then I encourage you to go to their website. And if you have done their CBD before, then I encourage you to try it out again. And if you liked it, if you didn't, then whatever. But if you liked it, then get yourself some more. But again, I always tell people to try it out. CBD is one of those supplements that it's helped a lot of people out. I mean, it's one of the reasons why they're in business. They started making it like some years ago. And I remember the first time I heard about it, I thought it sounded like snake oil. It's just like, okay, some weird supplement that some podcast person is trying to push, right? And then I started using it and I liked it. I was like, huh, pretty good. Okay, I'm sold, right? And so afterwards, I enjoyed CBD afterwards, and I've liked Charlotte's Web because it's been the most consistent product, and it's also a company where I've been out to their farms. I've met some of their workers and some of the people behind the scenes, some of these basically scientists that are dealing with all this stuff, and they make a really good premium product that is something that you can easily stand behind because of the purity of the product that's in there. And again, it's a really good product. So if you want to check it out, go to their website at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu20 to save 20% off, and you can try it out for yourself and see what you think. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll. Matt at Epic Roll is a jiu-jitsu black belt, a friend of mine, good guy, makes good jiu-jitsu gear from gis, rash guards, shorts, t-shirts, the whole thing. Cool designs, high quality stuff. You can go to his website at epicrollbjj.com, and the promo code is Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Upon joining, you'll get access to an exclusive library we've been building for a number of years. It has everything from just little extras with Eugene and I, also having each one of our guests contribute a little something to the Patreon. We also have things such as warm-up routines, seminars that have been recorded that I've done, rolling videos, I mean, the whole thing. And again, this is stuff that's not released anywhere else on YouTube or anything like that. So if you want to check it out, go to Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And guys, if you want to get my daily email newsletter, get all the exclusive offers that comes with that, and also receive a couple free ebooks, you can go to my website at jiujitsu.net/join. Upon joining, you'll get access to those ebooks for free. And then afterwards, you can get my daily email that I send out where I talk about everything from just different ideas, philosophy, tell you different ideas about jiu-jitsu and training, to books I'm reading. It's all over the place. So again, if you want to get access to that, jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN. And guys, that said, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.